occasions, in all the years and the thousands of movies that I've seen, that by simply looking at perhaps its poster, reading the plot outline or synopsis, or even just the trailer, I know almost instinctually that I'm going to like the movie. And 9 times out of 10, I am rewarded, and the movies turn out to be gems. I was going to say quiet gems because that's what this movie, the movie that I'm going to review today is. But I can recall, I think this was with some Mike Mills movies. There was 2 in particular. One was the one with Ewan McGregor and Christopher Plummer. I'm forgetting the name, something in between, something like that. And then there was the other one a couple of years later with Joaquin Phoenix. Both of those movies were just so good. And again, there was just something. I don't know if it was sort of a sixth sense now that I've developed after watching sort of so many films, but I just knew it. I knew it sort of in my gut. And that's exactly how I felt with Train Dreams, Netflix's latest film and adaptation of a novella by the same name, starring Joel Edgerton and directed by, is it Clint Bradley or Bartley? I'm forgetting, but he's the same guy who did Sing Sing last year. I think this has to be the most beautiful movie that I have seen in recent years, definitely in this year. And credit for this goes to the cinematographer, Adolfo Valeso, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. It is sublime. It is cliche often to say something, that a piece of art is transcendent, but the film, and I hope many of you can testify to this, is akin to going out like a walk, not in a park, but sort of like, in the forest, where you are alone, where there's quiet, and you are sort of overcome by how small you are and your place in the world. And yet you are also overwhelmed in awe of nature and sort of the presence that it has around you. That is what this movie is and felt like watching it, and sort of is presented as well. Because this movie, and I cannot sing its praises enough, is almost like a balm. It is almost like something that, and I don't want to sound too effusive, because that then borders on sort of like, cliche, but it is also almost like a balm for your inner being. There is something so quiet and yet so peaceful about this movie, and so it is just exactly what you would expect from a movie about a logger, played in this case by Joel Edgerton, who sort of in the early half of the 20th century is literally blow by blow, in this case, cutting down trees, building America. It is a movie about the American experience, about sort of a latter-day almost gold rush, a push into the West, a push to sort of civilize, tame sort of the wilds of America. This character, Robert, played by Joel Edgerton, is employed mostly by railroad companies who are using all of those felled trees to build, of course, the railroad tracks. And in it, he is often sort of out there in the wilderness. And it is his experience that becomes our experience. Because here is a man who goes through life very unassumingly, leaves little to no mark, is unfortunately scarred by tragedy, is marked by it, and yet he still somehow manages to create an existence that is out of what you would expect from someone living sort of in America at that particular time and place. And it speaks to you on a level that is almost primal, because his existence is simplicity in itself. And one wonders, is that sort of, even though this is fiction, there were of course many people who did live like this, sort of apart from society. Whether or not something like that is perhaps practicable, even practicable today. You will of course ask me, should this be seen in the cinema? Should it be streamed, or should you skip it? Well, I do not know if this movie had a theatrical run outside of America, brief as it was. So, for all of you sitting at home, most definitely stream it. Most definitely. It is essential viewing. It is perhaps the movie of the year for me. I'm going to get into this in greater detail because I feel I have to. But for those of you who are lucky enough, do watch this in the cinema if you can, because the imagery of this movie lends more so, and I kept on coming back to this. Of course, he used it differently, but I mean, sort of Paul Thomas Anderson in One Battle After Another used IMAX cameras, 70 millimeters and IMAX cameras, for that sort of, like, you know, these almost Hellenic sort of close-ups of his characters. And you know, if that was one use of using such a wide format, I wonder, I'm not sure what the kind of cameras that they used on this movie, but I mean, sort of definitely seeing on the big screen is worth it. A, of course, for the beauty of what is presented, but also the very fact that they only used natural light throughout the movie. And again, one begs the question, after seeing it presented so deftly, so crisply, one wonders why one would ever want to use, I mean, what we're using here in the cinema, not in the cinema, in the studio right now, artificial light. I could never imagine this movie in any other light. I mean, it is the beauty of sort of the canvas of anyone who has ever captured sort of, like, you know, sort of 20th century, 19th century America in a painting. It is that sort of brought to life and brought into this medium that we sit here and discuss. And of course, there are sort of these beautiful pianos, done by I think it's Bryce Dessner of the band. That it is Will Paxton and this sort of almost honeyed voiceover. It is a muted and yet deeply moving performance by Joel Edgerton. I always get that wrong, so I'm just going to say Joel. It is so many things that come together that make this piece of great American cinema, but then also of great storytelling as well. The film is about many things. It touches upon immigration. It touches upon how many, for example, Chinese immigrants who were there even earlier on, I mean, sort of like, you know, in the 18th and 19th century were largely responsible for building the railroads, building San Francisco, but yet were treated so horribly. It is about conservation. I mean, in this particular case, they are loggers. Their sort of very livelihoods are, sort of depend on cutting down trees. It is about modernity, about how sort of one way of living is almost sort of done away with to be replaced by something else. We see that in so many instances, how this man who used his own two hands to build a life, to earn a living, is suddenly replaced by a chainsaw. It is so many things, this movie. But I don't think that it is necessary to find meaning in a movie like this when we are essentially being given, essentially being told a story about a man who very frankly could be any one of us, who lived a life that may not have touched many. His life may have not have impacted many others. He is for most parts a hermit, he's a recluse in the woods. But in telling his story, it is almost a part of almost American mythology, as if you are sort of, in telling his story, you are also telling a story of, a very particular time and place. I could go on about this movie endlessly, because I was so moved by it. But I think I will end this maybe, or maybe speak even more, I don't know. But I have to speak about a particular moment that brought me to tears. I think, sort of now, for those of you who have been watching regularly, you do know that sort of cinema does make me, it does make me weep. It does have that power on, that hold on me. But there is a moment of such beauty, such innocence, that I could not help. I just broke down in tears. It is now, we have moved on. This movie charts this man's life, and we are now sort of in the fag end. We are now sort of like, towards, sort of the exit music stage, where this man is now sort of, maybe if not reflecting on his life or the life that he has lived, is definitely sort of now coming to terms with what he has done, and sort of he's a much older man, and in this particular scene, which is towards the end of the movie, we learn that every so often he does like to make it into town. He takes the train and rides it into town and just take in the sights. Of course, this is a man who lives out in the woods, and for him, sort of these buildings, these lights, these attractions, sort of, they are novelties in a very true sense. And in this one moment, we see him taking in sort of a variety show, where you have those, circus, pardon my language, freaks on stage, and he breaks down into tears. But that's not the moment. The moment comes a little later, where he's out in a field, and advertised are plane rides, like biplane rides for $4 a piece. I wish that could happen now. And he takes he takes a little zip in the air, and as the plane is up, and sort of he gets to see for the very first time sort of the world from on high. The pilot tells him, you better hold on, because the thing is, he's about to do a barrel roll. And as he does a barrel roll, sort of, he goes like that, of course, it goes like that. And, thanks to the harness, he's suddenly braced. And in this moment, what beautiful editing. It cuts to him as a child, a scene that we'd already seen before, where he is embraced by an elder, by an adult. What a moment. I mean, sort of, it brought tears to my eyes, because here's a man sort of nearing the end of his life, an adult, he's seen it all, he's experienced it all. And yet sort of in that moment, it still always comes down to sort of those childhood experiences and that sort of that feeling for connection that you have with a parent or an adult, and sort of their embrace, and how it always takes you back to them. This moment, if you remember, if you all remember the movie Ratatouille, and you remember the food critic, that very harsh one, played by Ian McKellen, there he is eating ratatouille, and it immediately, sort of in that single bite that he takes, he's immediately transported back to his mother's kitchen, and sort of the experience of having the food that she cooked. And just as that was a beautiful moment, this too here in Train Dreams is an equally sort of, I have to use the word again, it's just beautiful. And it is exactly what cinema is and is meant to be, and when it's done right, it is again beautiful.